Hey everyone, it's Nicole, and today I'm here with a new haircut and I'm going to discuss all the books that I've read in March and April. I completely forgot one book in my last wrap-up video. I read it in February. It was actually my patron pick book for February and I really enjoyed it, but somehow I just forgot to talk about it. Maybe I just didn't write it down. Before filming these videos I go to Goodreads and I write down all the books that I've read, and somehow it just slipped. Anyway, I really enjoyed the book and I'm going to talk about it right now. So, The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzi Lee. Do you ever have these books that you know for sure you're going to enjoy, but you postpone them because you think that someday you won't be able to find a title that you're going to love, and this is a 100% pick for you? This was basically this book. I posted a poll on my Patreon account, which I do every month. Basically, if you're my Patreon, you have an opportunity to make me read a certain book. So if you want to jump on that, the link is going to be down below. And The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue was on the list in this poll. And my patron chose it, so I had to read it. I enjoyed it immensely. It was such a great book. You know that I love historical fiction, but I never read such an exciting historical fiction that was young adult also. I think with young adult historical fiction there's a lot of misses. I've read quite a bit of those. First of all, it's historical fiction. Second of all, it's an adventure, and the characters are extremely vibrant, and I was very much invested in their fates. I love their personalities. I enjoyed the protagonist. Although his whole arc is I'm a privileged person who doesn't know about other people's struggles and I don't care about them. And by the end of the book, he becomes a better person. And with these types of arcs, you can make it very simplistic and it's not going to work for a lot of people. And also you can just be borderline offensive. But I think that this book had a great balance. The plot follows Monty, who is an heir to an aristocratic rich family in England, and his best friend Percy, with whom he's in love with and who is also biracial and a gentleman. They are becoming adults, and as a part of this journey they have to go on a grand tour of Europe, which was very common in that age. We get a look into Monty's family. It turns out that he's not particularly close to his parents, and also that they have another child who was just born, and it is a possibility that Monty will have to take a step back, especially because his father is always disappointed in him, to the point of abusing him verbally and physically. So for Monty and Percy, this grand tour is the only chance to escape their families for the last time, because afterwards their families want them to fill certain roles that neither of them are happy to take. Monty's younger sister Felicity also is tagging along with them because she has to be dropped off in France in a very prestigious boarding school for women. But their dream tour is disrupted by all the things that are started to happening along the way. I love the book. It reminded me a lot of Three Musketeers and similar adventuresque stories. I also really love the fact that it addressed a lot of issues along the way. Monty is a very interesting protagonist, not because he's privileged and he is slowly realizing it, no, but the part of his personality that was always getting him in trouble. He possessed this ability to always find it. He could never stop himself from saying something. He literally had no idea what is damage control, and he always did things that he regretted doing later. And I think it's an interesting quality in the protagonist because it moves the plot very well. And sometimes we see this passive protagonists that don't do much and stuff is happening to them. In this case, in 80% of the situation, Monty was responsible for things that were happening to them. And that was entertaining to see. and actually a very fresh and new angle that I didn't see before. Then there's Percy, who I find very interesting as well. I don't want to give you any spoilers about him, but the fact that he's biracial and visibly brown, and that he's still a gentleman, and how he acts in public and why he acts this way in public was a very interesting discussion as well. I think it was done with a lot of sensitivity, and I just really enjoyed it. Then there's Felicity, who's also a really cool character. She's going to get her own book, and I'm really excited about it. She's also asexual. She is an incredibly smart, practical young woman. She's very into studying, and especially into studying human bodies. She wants to be a doctor, but obviously she can't be a doctor, and it bums her out a lot, and a lot of struggles that she has I've understood and I empathized with. There is the scene that got a little bit of heat, I think. At least I've seen people critiquing it. When Monty and Felicity talk, and Monty is very in the face with his sexuality. He says that he really loves women, but he also really loves men. She talks to him and she confesses that she doesn't understand him, and she brings up Bible, of course. And people were saying that a smart person would understand, but it's actually not true. I know a lot of smart people, my family and relatives included. Some of them are even engineers, and they know a lot of things. They are smart, intelligent people, but they're still homophobic. They don't understand it, and some of them are aggressively homophobic, and some of them are just ignorant. So Felicity comes off as ignorant in this question, but also I think because her understanding of sexuality is very limited as a woman of a certain age. And I appreciate the honesty in this scene because it wasn't violent, it wasn't aggressive, it was just a first step between them that is going to get them closer, I think. I'm out of breath. It's like I recorded the book talk of this book, although I was just wrapping up. Anyway, I really love the book. I highly recommend it. I want more books like this because I love books that are about adventures. Then I finally finished The Brutal Truth by Winter Lee, and it's an FF romance novel. I talked a little bit about it in my currently reading video that I've done not so long ago. It's about a woman named Maddie who lives in New York City. She doesn't love living there, but she won a green card, and she kind of has to because everyone is hyped about it, everyone is obsessed with her living in New York, although she is from Australia. She works as a night reporter in a small shitty paper. She loves reporting, but she's not particularly in love with her job, although she needs it to pay the rent. Since their paper doesn't make a lot of profit, it is bought by a huge corporation which is led by Elena Bartel, who is known as a person who buys a lot of papers and magazines that don't do well and destroy them to make something more profitable out of them. So everyone is freaking out, they want to keep their jobs, obviously. And it's basically The Devil Wears Prada. Mary has this idea that she and Elena Bartel could be great friends, and she's not ready to back off without a fight. It's a fun novel, I enjoyed it. There was a lot of plot twists, a lot of chemistry between the characters. The only thing that I didn't like is the last 15% of the book because it turned so mushy. So mushy, and I hate mush. Like, I cannot deal with cringy things. I love romance, but you cannot change the personality of characters so they could be in relationships together. And I felt like Elena Bartel's character was changed a little bit in the 15% of the novel, and she acted differently. I don't know, overall, really enjoyed the novel. I would have appreciated if the personality of characters stayed the same. I also finished Redefining Realness by Janet Mock. I really loved the novel. It's a memoir about Janet Mock's childhood and her transition. She is a transgender activist and writer. I really love her writing style. I loved the way she constructed the story. It felt very smooth and I flew through the story pretty quickly. I have to say that even though the story is very important, you have to be cautious with it because there's a lot of trigger warnings. She was abused as a child sexually, and she also worked in sex work, and there's a few stories that, yeah, make you uncomfortable at least. And the March patron pick was Beneath the Sugar Sky by Seanan McGuire, and I love the series anyway, so I was very excited to read it. But the problem was that I actually didn't like the book so much. I love the series overall. It's the third book in the We Were Children series, and I think that this one is the weakest out of the three. It follows a character that we didn't see before. Her name is Cora, and she comes from a world of mermaids. And the most encompassing trait about her character is that she's fat. And I'm sad to say it because I want more representation of fat people in young adult fiction, especially because we don't see a lot of it, but it wasn't good in my opinion. It is also not a very interesting plot. It's very predictable. And I think my expectations were so high because the second book is the best book out of the three. It has a very interesting plot. This one, besides the descriptions of the world, was extremely mediocre. In regards to what I've said earlier about Cora and representation of her size, it was handled so awkwardly. In many scenes, Cora says things that a person won't say aloud. I would understand if it would have been in her mind, just her point of view, what she thinks about, but saying it out loud makes it awkward. And I'm not saying addressing a certain issue. I'm saying that a lot of scenes were built a certain way so Seanan McGuire could say to the readers that doing something is not okay. And it didn't seem natural, and it especially came to light for me after I read Leah on the Offbeat, which was much better in this regard. And now I'm going to talk about Leah on the Offbeat by Becky Albertalli, which I loved. I loved it so much. It is one of the best books I've read this year. I think that Becky Albertalli is a genius. She knows how to write friendship groups, and it's very important if you want people to stun your books and stun your series in general. Leah on the Offbeat was my April patron pick, so I wasn't mad at all. Leah on the Offbeat follows Leah Burke, who was the best friend of Simon in Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda. If you watched the movie, you are very familiar with these characters. I didn't watch the movie yet, and I'm very bitter about it because they didn't buy it here, and I cannot watch it in a cinema, and I'm very bitter about it. Salty and bitter. Anyway, I really love this friendship group. I love Becky Albertalli. She manages to write characters that are so rich and that have human personalities, you know what I mean? They're not too quirky. Contemporary genre, especially young adult contemporary genre, suffers from a lot of overly quirky characters that cannot exist in real life. I never met people like that. I think that Becky Albertalli knows where's the balance between interesting character and realistic character, and I enjoy it a lot. Leah Burke is the character that I was very curious about in the first book. Especially I was curious about her relationship with Abby and why it's just a tiny bit tense. It was touched a little bit in the first book, but we didn't get the details, and we got a lot of details in this one. So basically Leah and her friends are still in high school, but it's the last year and they're all going to graduate and have prom and move on to different universities. She's a little pressed but doesn't want to show to all these people that she is concerned about her future and about leaving all these friends behind, or in this case, them leaving her behind because she is going to stay in her state, I think. I'm not very good with states. I'm not from USA. Anyway. And also she is pressured by the fact that her family is not perfect. Her father divorced her mother and left them, and they're also not rich. She feels like they don't have a lot of money compared to her friends, and she's a little bit ashamed of it. So that's the two other layers. And then there's the third layer where she shows everyone that she doesn't care about prom and this stereotypical school stuff, but she really cares about prom deep down, and she wants to be pretty and she wants to have a date. And the date thing is brought to light when one of the friends of Brahms, the Simon's boyfriend, starting to pay attention to her, but also when Abby, who's a longtime friend and is dating one of her friends also, starts to act weird around her. On one hand, she has this athlete who's sort of into her and wants to hang out, and she acts all awkward around him. And on the other hand, there's Abby that she had a crush on a long time ago and that she thinks is heterosexual. So Leah is confused. I think it's exciting, I think it's filled with drama, I think it's filled with layers. I was jumping up and down when certain things happened. I was very, very into it. I also wrote a reaction post with a lot of GIFs on my Patreon page, so you can check it out, it's public. I actually wanted to do a full-on book talk about Leah on the Offbeat, but I think that I will maybe do one on Simon Universe in general, because I really want to watch the movie and maybe even reread the book, and then my research on the whole universe will be complete and I can discuss the whole thing. Tell me what you think about it below. That's everything that I read in March and April. I think overall these 2 months were pretty great. I didn't read any duds and I'm glad. I hope that the next 2 months are going to be good as well. Tell me what you read in these past few months, what you're currently reading, or if you read any of those books and you have opinions on them. Don't hesitate and comment. That's everything that I want to say in this video. I hope to see you soon in my next one. Bye!